Gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the co-founder of Augmented World Expo, Ori Inbar, to lead our wrap-up session.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. So this is it. Everything good has an end, right? And this is it. So we have about 45 minutes for the wrap-up with lots of cool stuff. We'll start with a panel discussion, and you guys are going to be part of it as well. Have some prizes, still some more prizes for the conference, and finally with the grand finale. So let's get started right away with our great panel that we have today. We want to discuss future opportunities in the augmented world, and also some general impressions from the conference here, see where this whole thing is going. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Brian Mullins, Lawrence Gasman, and Tish Shute. All right, so we're going to start with just a few questions just to get the ball rolling, and then we have a mic here, and we'd like to have you guys actually ask questions as well. Let me get started with just a quick question about the conference itself. So what was the most interesting or promising thing that you've seen in the conference this year? Let's start with Brian.
I think that one of the things that stands out as most promising to me is the attendance. AWE and its predecessor conference, ARE, was always full of some really smart people that are passionate about the space. And they're always doing kind of interesting things. But this year, the number of people has grown so much, and the number of variations of ideas in this space have grown so much that it's really encouraging, both for people who've been in the space for a long time and to see the new faces and the new energy.
Cool. Lawrence?
Well, my role in life is to look at how new technologies become revenue-generating technologies. So over the years, I've looked at lots of technologies, and I agree. I mean, I've watched lots of conferences like this just go on forever with, 200 people or something, and clearly the growth from last year is very significant. And the other thing that impressed me was all the young entrepreneurs. I went to that hardware session on Monday and was just very impressed with the upcoming generations. Not just the Americans, actually, although I like to think that this stuff is going to be focused in America, but from all over the world. So that was very gratifying, and not just in the augmented reality sense, but just as a citizen of the world.
Cool. Tish, what do you say?
Well, first, the community and everyone who came to the conference, and if you noticed, I kept asking the audience who was here, who came the first year, who was new this year, and it was just really fantastic to see both people who were here the first year and then the whole extension of this community and the excitement. But other than that, I mean, just to me, I was so excited to have Steve Mann here when I was writing my own presentation. It was like hard not to mention him on every slide, and that, and coupled with this hardware startup community that I think I've said this in a session earlier today, but I live in the dog patch in San Francisco, and we actually hold a hardware startup barbecue at least once a month with Sam Cuttress, a neighbor, and the excitement in that neighborhood, and the fact that you can take your ideas and you can test your ideas in a market with Kickstarter and Indiegogo. I mean, it's a massive game changer, and it's just going to grow, and it's growing so fast, and it's going to change everything because we're in this space of wearables, and now we can make them, and we can know what kind to make because people are going to tell us what they want.
So since you touched on the future, let's start talking a little bit about what's in the pipeline. So Lawrence, you had been doing a lot of research over the years and looking at different markets and kind of trying to project where they're going. And you've prepared a few slides for us today. So why don't you walk us through what you've prepared? I guess the first question is the number one question we all have. How is this market going to grow over the next few years?
Well, what we did, and I think you're going to show the slides, is we looked at...
It's up. First one is up.
Oh, yes. We actually looked at about 40 different applications for AR. And what you're about to see, by the way, is like the ultra-fast version of my presentation. If you go on our website, you'll see a full webinar we did on this. This is just a couple of slides from it. And those 40 applications were grouped into different groups like retail and education. And then we looked at the addressable markets for those, what size they were, and what the likely penetration that AR would bring. And we've been doing this in one form or another for a long time in different technologies. So we have some idea of what penetrations are likely to be. And this is what we ended up with, which was a fairly classical bar curve. 2 points from that, at least 2 points from that. One of them is there's not much going on in revenue generation now, and it's going to take a few years before it ramps up. Our impression from many other areas that we've looked at is until you get to a few $100 million, the big companies are not going to really commit themselves to making big investments. But they're, as you know, they're all watching this space very carefully. And I think they're going to be a very significant source of finance, by the way. VCs aren't what they used to be. I lived all the way through the telecom and computer revolution and had a lot of dealings with VCs during those days, and, well, they aren't what they used to be. So people are looking at other forms of finance, whether it's crowdsourcing. But by looking at strategic investments, they're really just going back to the way that businesses used to be financed. So I think that's a very strong thing to look at. The other thing that really comes out of this, I think, is that anybody who goes into this to build a significant business is going to really have to wait around. So they are going to need to somehow significant investment or be very small, like some kind of agency or something like that. So I think that's the two messages that come out of that. And the third one is that there's really only a few classes of applications that supply significant revenue throughout this period. One of them's retail, and the second one is gaming, and that's no surprise. I think what's the surprise from our analysis is that when you've done that, that's where the huge bulk of the revenues are likely to come from.
So Lawrence, let's stop you for a second and see what the entrepreneur on the panel thinks about this and your interpretation of that.
I think it's really interesting to note that one of the most significant things year over year that Daiquiri saw at the convention is last year there were a lot of people that came that were interested or exploring augmented reality. And this year we had quite a few people that came looking for a solution. They'd made their decision, they had an application, and they came to the booth and told us what it was and were serious about acquiring it. I think it speaks to us because there's always been opportunity the last few years. It's a very exciting technology, and there's a lot of valuable things you can do with it. And now, not only is it increasing, its growth, but the rate at which it's increasing is
And what do you think about these numbers? Do you believe them?
I think that, as with all long-term projections, there's usually a fairly wide margin of error, and you have to kind of keep your eye on the ball as it moves, and all of the expressions like skating and where the puck's going to go. But I think that looking at the rate of increase, I think that we'll see that moving these numbers up forward, and I'm very excited about that.
Okay, so you see there are different colors here, which are kind of breaking down into different categories. Lawrence, you want to tell us what these categories are, and maybe we'll move to the next slide?
Yeah, I'd actually have to look back at them to remember what they all are. But so,
Feel free to stand up. Yeah.
if you don't mind, I'll stand up and look at my own slides. So we looked at we looked at about 40 different areas, but then we concentrated them into classes of areas. And we felt that retail and promotional really was going to make the biggest difference in terms of revenue generation over the period we considered, which was a 10-year period. And if you can see down there, we looked at different applications within them. One of the points I want to make is that there are some applications, these are revenue projections, not profit projections, which you hopefully you understand can be very different things. And I think that one of the reasons that gets to be a rather large number in the retail and promotional area is we just expect this to become part of the palette of advertising agencies and web designers and that whole class of people. And those are not necessarily very profitable businesses. In fact, as the wow factor for AR begins to diminish, and it will, and I've heard this from several people here, that the margins on that will start to go out. But there are some really interesting things that are going on, like virtual shopping malls where you can try things on and they're not completely technically competent except in a few areas like glasses, ironically, since glasses has another connotation in AR. So we're looking at that. The other thing in entertainment and gaming I wanted to mention before is that that's not by any means as big, but it's where everything seems to start. It's where you can test out really interesting ideas, especially in AR or VR. So I think that bears watching, even if it isn't as big as the other areas. I wanted to mention something about what you said, Brian, about the forecasting. The point of forecasting isn't exactly to get it right. It's to philosophize about where the market is going, and the process of forecasting is really to understand what the dynamics of the underlying markets really are. And you also get to understand what size a market could possibly be, or what could change to make it a lot bigger. So that's the idea. I mean, we've got 10-year forecasts in that. If you think I'm going to stand up here and tell you that that's what it's exactly going to be, then, I shouldn't be out there if I'm that kind of guy. But so these are the few areas. And then it starts to get very small. Now, well, to make the point I just made before, if you look at navigation, travel, and location-based, we don't see, and this is specifically in the AR context, this isn't location-based services, which is obviously a whole different thing in a much larger market. But this could change. If it could be really proved that an AR function would cut down on traffic accidents or whatever, then you could see that being, the next seatbelts. You just have to have it. And my number would look silly if that was happened. It would be several orders of magnitude bigger.
So Brian, Tish, what do you think about these 5 categories? Do you see those as the 5 leading categories in the next few years, or is it missing something that you're seeing?
I think one of the categories that doesn't seem to be represented is in the industrial vertical. A lot of applications there are educational, so it's about on-the-job training and safety, but I think that it's a very tangible and practical segment. It's also our fastest growing vertical, and we're really excited about all the opportunities that are there in that space.
Okay.
Well, we've got educational and instructional. I think a lot of that.
So yes, it's part of it. Okay. Thanks, Lawrence. I think we'll go back to some additional questions now. Like, in general, how do you see the AR market or the augmented world market evolving over the next, let's say, 3 or 5 AWEs?
Is that for me?
We'll start with Tish.
Well, I think first, obviously a big, and this has affected our event this year too, a big hat tip to Google for putting augmented reality onto the radar of popular culture. You cannot underestimate that. But what's super exciting, and what I think for me the biggest takeaway from this event is basically, if everyone was at Steve Mann's talk, the 5 generations, and glass is on the first generation, which is exactly appropriate for the giant and the incumbent and the owner of massive amounts of data that they can really utilize in the generation 1. But what gets me so excited, I even start talking about this, I get kind of hyper, is the fact that generation 5 is, there's actually someone working in a company working in this space, the Meta group, and that they're in Y Combinator. And what that means is that what brought software to where it is today is this process of rapid iteration. And the fact that this is very, very well understood now, the way that once you can get the market to tell you and get the telemetry to tell you about your product quickly, fail fast, and reiterate. Once that comes to the wearables, I don't think anyone in this room can imagine what will happen, because that's what's been missing. And the fact that we have this process, and the fact that Y Combinator has welcomed into its arms, one of the Generation 5 augmented reality eyewear startups, I think it's a game changer.
Cool. Brian?
I definitely share Tish's enthusiasm for the startup culture and what wearable computing could do to this space. I think that what I think is most significant about Google and Google Glass is that they're not talking about the technology. They never advertise Glass as a cool piece of tech. It's about the lifestyle. It's about what you can do in your regular life. And it's always featured in situations like fashion shows and things that people outside of the hardcore tech community can understand. I think that's really important, and I predict as the augmented reality industry grows and there's additional adoption by folks in everyday life, not just the early adopters, not the tech segment that's really enthusiastic about it today, that ultimately the idea of the term even augmented reality will be like saying information superhighway. It'll just be something that's so ordinary to people and something that they see every day. They won't be able to remember a world without augmented reality.
Cool. Lawrence, I want to ask you the next question, which is, based on all your analysis of this market and different segments, what do you see as the main roadblocks for driving the adoption of augmented reality and revenue in this market?
Well, I think some of it is going to be investment. To get this out to mass markets is always expensive. To get it out to consumer markets can cost tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and getting that money.
You have an estimation of how much investment is currently happening in the space?
We've got some numbers, but they're just lists of numbers, and it's not that much. I mean, it's going to take, the big takeaway from our report is it's going to take big companies to get very actively involved, and which takes us back to Google and Google Glass. That's actually one of the big game changers, like you said, but it's also one of the unknown factors. I didn't say this before, and I meant to. Our numbers did not include
investments.
Didn't include helmets and glass and whatever you want to call those things. And I think one reason we didn't do that, there's actually some talk about it in the report, but it wasn't included in those numbers, is we haven't a clue. Making those things are hard. I'm a hardware guy, not a software guy. I know what went into that because I've been around people like that, and it's not easy. But nobody has the slightest idea. The original question, what is this going to be like? This show's going to be like in 3 years. I think that's going to be the big game changer, because there's going to be a lot of people offering software for these headsets and things, and you can only begin to guess what that's going to be. I thought I'm pretty much ADHD-ish kind of person. I'm focused on like multiple different things. That would be perfect for me, because I could watch a screen while I talk to my kids and things. It might drive them crazy, but there's just a lot of things that haven't been worked out yet.
Brian, what do you think are the challenges that we're facing to achieve the vision that we're all sharing?
I think that one of the biggest challenges to the industry itself is quality of experience. I think that if the consumers see too many low quality experiences too often, they can get soured, and it takes a lot to get them back. I would caution everyone in the space to really look at the value of what you're producing. Know that just saying that it is AR, or just doing a very simple gimmick like what we call the floating shoe, where it's just showcasing AR as a gimmick, I would be really cautious of that and its effect on the industry in general. Like one of my co-founders likes to point out, if movies were all commercials, nobody would go to the movie theater. We have to look at really meaningful content that's something people would go back to and is valuable in and of itself to really sustain this medium where we can still tell stories. We can do it in a completely different way. But if we don't and we sour the customers, it'll take us a couple of years to get them back and show them the next technological innovations.
And in terms of skills, we'll look at the whole slew of skills that you need in order to achieve this vision. Where do you see the biggest gap? I mean, is it computer vision scientists? Is it application developers, designers, producers, business development people? Where do you see the biggest gap at this point that will help kind of advance this?
I think that it's the same. Our industry is about creating a medium. Mediums are about telling stories. I know I'm rehashing things that other people in the industry say, but it's true. It's the same problem Hollywood has. The hardest thing to get is a good script, I think. And we need to be engaging those creative folks, those storytellers that can make those valuable experiences. We love the technology, and people are impressed by the technology, but the story is where the value's at, and that's what
How many
people
AR
engage with.
storytellers do we have here? See, it's not too bad. Cool, Tish, what do you think? What do you think are the challenges?
I
in
think,
front of
well,
us?
the challenges, absolutely, and that's, in my perky optimism, I stopped before I said that in this new movement where you see people like Nick Pinkston, who's the organizer of the SF Hardware Startup Meetup that you attended on Monday, he's sold his first company, CloudFab, and is building an AWS for manufacturing. And I, of course, asked him, Nick, so what about the eyewear? When do you think that your service will be able to deal with that? And he's, oh no, that is very hard. I say at least 2 years, but that 2 years is nothing. So that's the challenges of bringing hardware into this sort of, bringing augmented reality hardware into this new cycle of rapid iteration and basically this customer feedback on what products we should make and do is a little bit off. And then to go back to the content, I think Brian's exactly right. Right now, we need storytellers for this model we have now, and that is a challenge. But actually, as we begin to explode into this sort of 1,000 flowers of wearables, it becomes even harder. And this, in my talk, I didn't actually go into this in detail, but Steve Mann's idea of personal imaging is absolutely core to this. Well, think about what it means when you're trying to think of something that is this kind of, I called it personal desire engines, and I think we have to have we have to be working across communities of artists, communities of quantified self people. I love the habit design community. And these communities have to come together to reinvent content, because as Tommy said, this is not another form factor for the internet. And he was so right.
Absolutely. Okay, now we're going to open up for questions from the audience. There's a mic here. Please form a line behind it and shoot away. Have our first contestant.
I just had a quick question on where do you see AR's role in utilizing telepresence robotics and drones and that sort of thing for operation and the extension of the human self?
Who wants to tell you that?
Is that for me or
For whomever on the panel.
Do you want to
Take it
start?
away, Tish.
Well, I'm lucky enough to work very near where Chris Anderson does 3D robotics, and his company 3D Robotics, and it's huge. And what I see, and I've heard this from him too, is this use case for drones in agriculture to go across these sort of fields and to find out where we should be spraying crops, where not, because they can actually see what's going on in these fields, because at the moment we just like throw these chemicals out. Yes, so drones are huge, and Mary Meeker's report, I think, included drones in our column with the wearables and the eyewear. So I think drones are huge, and that's one of the big applications.
And where do you see that going in collaboration with the wearables themselves as far as?
So how do the robotics converge with wearables?
But you see, this is what's amazing about this space. The winner Sphero of our augmented hardware competition, that is just an awesome company, and I was privileged enough to do actually a panel with them at South by, so I met their engineering team. The sky's the limit for them. I mean, look at the simplicity of this robotic platform they've built. Who knows what they're going to be doing with that in 2 years? I mean, we're in an amazing moment, and I mean, 1,000 flowers will bloom, and I'm not sure any of us are capable of seeing all of their colors and textures and beauty right now.
I think Tish makes some great points. My background's actually in robotics, and Tish knew that.
Yes,
That's why I was
yes.
laughing. I think that there's two sides of the equation. At Daiquiri, from a user perspective, we like to think of one of the biggest opportunities for augmented reality is that it's a user interface for the Internet of Things. It gives you the opportunity to see and visualize things in ways and in the context of things that there's no other way, and there's really not been a powerful way to do before. But then on the other side of the equation, if If anybody got a chance to see me talk earlier, it was about understanding. I think the future of technology in AR is about the devices understanding more about their environments and the objects and the people in those environments. I think those same technologies are directly applicable to robotics and making the robotics and the telepresence devices more intelligent and more interactive with the space.
Any more questions? Go ahead.
So I think we all believe the technology is really getting there, but I think my question is the next step connecting the virtual world and the physical world together, almost Web 3.0, as I like to call it. Do you guys think that really storytelling will help bring the technology and kind of the consumers that are not used to this technology together?
Can I take that? So first of all, I completely agree with storytelling. I think I'd probably call it marketing. And that's my point. I think the things that will take off first are ones that will start generating money, and they're probably relatively small things that just do useful stuff. So I actually didn't know about drones and Chris Anderson, but it's certainly true that AR provides an interface to complex systems, and that would be a perfect interface to that, where you can control a number of things within the context and abilities of human intelligence. If drones do useful things and it's a useful interface, then I think people will make money out of it, and I think those companies will make money for themselves, but also help to bring an air of respectability to AR, and I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, you know, everybody's like super enthusiastic about it in here, or we wouldn't be there, but I was talking to my 20-year-old stepdaughter who, you know, I mean, she's 20, she's not my age, and you'd think that she'd be interested, but she'd never heard of AR, and she's at a good university, and she's kind of a science person. So we've got a long way to go to bring that even to people you'd think would know about AR.
So what about virtual worlds and augmented and real worlds? Are they colliding somehow? Brian, Tish?
Well, I think that they are. I wanted to add, I think that when I say storytelling too, and it's all about mixing the virtual world and the physical world, it has to go beyond marketing as well. I think, you know, marketing is generally what you see that it is, but it needs to go further. I think our industry, from a storytelling standpoint, is much like the early days of 3D animation, and nobody believed, even the players in the space, that there would be feature-length entertainment in that form. And when you talk about a technology that can understand that there's a door up there, and there's stairs, and there's a chair, and someday, very soon, a character can walk through that door and down those stairs and sit in that chair and tell you that narrative story in your environment, in your context. That's really exciting to me. And I'll go out on a limb and predict that in the next 5 years, there'll be a feature-length form of entertainment in this medium that we'll all enjoy.
We have time for just one more question.
I just want to say, you saw Philip Rosedale's demo, didn't you? You know when Philip Rosedale's doing something like that, you know you've got the answer to your question coming along soon.
Yeah, I mean, mine's actually a little bit of a follow-on to that concept. I mean, I was really struck when Will said that, you know, this concept that the world's okay and augmented reality is there to just enhance our perception of it. And, you know, does New Zealand really exist? And it got to me thinking, after I also went to the impact on society, is what is the impact? Have you guys thought about? And I haven't, and I'm enthralled with augmented reality, have been, but I have small children. How do we, you know, how is this going to affect their experience growing up in the real world? At what point is it similar to other screens? Have you thought about at what point do we let children, you know, experience these things that we're creating? Just throw that out there.
I think it's a great question. You know, I'll just say that my kids are my best test subjects. My oldest is about to turn 6. My middle's just a little over 2. And I feel like if they don't get it and they don't see it, that it's a good indicator that we're not doing it right. I think it's like any other device. You know, the parents have to consider, you know, how much time they spend on the device, how much time they spend doing other things. It's not dissimilar from other, you know, outlets for media like television and, you know, and the internet. You know, parents need to look at how much time they spend on it. You know,
Okay, sorry, Bob, we have to move on. Before you leave, stay for one more second. We have a couple of prizes. So we had today in the afternoon a session called the Best AR Startup or Startup Launchpad. And in that session, we had 5 really great companies. I mean, we've been doing this for 4 years now, and these 5 startups were just phenomenal, both hardware and software. Really nice combination. And we had 3 judges that contemplated for over half an hour, or even more, who should actually get the top prize. And they couldn't agree, actually. At the end of the day, we had 2 versus 1, but we had to give the prize to somebody. I mean, there's just one check. So the best AR Startup Award goes to, where's the drum roll? Drum roll. Thank you. 3 Gear Systems.
Oh, yes.
Brian, you want to give me a big check? So we actually have a big check. And Brian Mullins is going to hand it over to Robert Wang.
Have fun cashing it.
Now, you want to say a few words? If you want. Let me quickly bring it this.
I just want to. Okay.
You get a picture. You want a picture.
All right.
You want a picture with the check.
So you have to come in the front.
Okay. I want to thank my co-founders, the founding team, Christopher Twig and Kendrick Ken, who couldn't be there here today. Chris was manning the booth for most of this conference today, and Kendrick manned the booth yesterday along with me. They're the best co-founders I have. Also our advisors, I guess. And this has been a great conference. I want to thank Ori for the opportunity and I didn't even know this existed until a few weeks ago when I met Tish. And this has been a great experience for us. I hope it's been a great experience for you guys too. So thanks to Ori and Tish.
Thank you. Thank you.
So next prize, we actually had an AR treasure hunt called Gold Rush over the last couple of days. And people had to collect gold coins all over the conference and unlock logos of sponsors. And the winner for that is, drum roll, thank you, Alice Shute.
Oh.
Congratulations. So Alice, what you get is the AWE Ultimate Package, which includes the AWE 2014 free ticket, the I am in all button, and an AWE t-shirt, and the big prize is the Meta Glasses kit, which is worth $750 and will be ready in September.
I'm jealous.
Congrats.
Thank you so much.
You can say a few words.
I just want to say that this was actually the first application that I ever downloaded to my phone, and when
That's amazing.
That's so fun, right?
when I first met Mateo in San Francisco when they were doing a Google Glass event, they had downloaded AR Tiger and also the Junaio something also. But I had Junaio, I'm sorry, did I mispronounce that? I apologize. But I had found this other application before then when I was looking up AR, and I actually downloaded it by myself. And I thought, oh, this is neat, I can find gold coins. So today when I was wandering around the hotel, it was like, and I suggest people get involved in this game, it's just fun. I was wandering on the outside, I was going through hallways, I was going into other conventions and into their rooms. But it was like an experience because there was all these hallways, so it was just amazing.
All right,
experience.
congratulations.
Congratulations.
Many thanks to our panel.
And many, yes. I just want to thank Ori because without Ori, none of this happens. So please, really a big round.
Now get off stage. Come on, get off stage. All right, now guys, we're up for the grand finale. But, you know, when we use this font, we usually want to have AWE in it, right? but it's kind of hard to fit it in. But I have actually a great idea. You know Elmer Fudd from Bugs Bunny? Yeah? Be very, very quiet. Remember that? So here you go. Grand finale. And for our grand finale, we actually have a really cool show. So let me welcome to the stage Steve Mann and Ryan to give us a really, really cool music performance. Where's Steve? No? Oh, you're Steve Mann?
This one? Oh, there we go. So when I do a lot as a composer and engineer. I do a lot of AR in performance art, and you can get these really rich experiences. But sometimes you actually learn a lot in a crowd setting of people learning. And so, could we have one volunteer who wants to play hydraulophone, play 4 notes on a hydraulophone? Okay, go for it. Okay. This is. I'm just marking 4 notes here. So thank you. It's always fascinating. It's probably a lot of you have had who have brought equipment over the airlines have had some interesting times coming over here. So congratulations to you for making it here. And obviously we've eventually made it here with this hydraulophone. So it's pretty amazing. Often, actually one of the stories that Steve sometimes has when he has a battery, and we bring big batteries for the pumps here too, but when he has a battery for his wearable computer, if it's displaying the battery voltage, it's usually the security guards at airports would rather have the batteries charging, not discharging, because he sometimes has the digital readout. So it's 12.49, 12.48, 12.47. so it's sometimes a tricky issue. Okay, so we're just going to, and I'll show you what to do in just a moment. Actually, so.
It's just getting the hydraulophone started up here, get the water flowing through it.
Actually, we need
It's a bit of a rough shipment over the airlines. If some airline breaks guitars, there's always an airline that breaks hydraulophones. So that hydraulophone is thumped around pretty good on the way over here, so a couple of loose pipes in there, but anyway.
Okay. All right. Okay. Actually, this is okay. So we have a B, a D, G, and A. All right. Okay. And maybe to mark it off, I'll use those cups. Where do those cups go? Here. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to just. This is some augmented reality here. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna stand there while I play. Now. So this is and this is great because Ori just and we'll get Steve to join in.
That wasn't planned at all.
Exactly. so it's so never been tried before. So I'll just what I'm going to do is I'll just this is actually, excuse my horrible voice here, but I'll just show you the first little verse of this piece. So, oh Shenandoah, I long to see you away, you rolling river. Oh Shenandoah, I long to see you away, we're bound away, across the wide Missouri. Okay, so we're just getting started here. Okay, so now these instruments are really easy to play in a very basic way because you can block a water jet or you can unblock it. But the real key to learning how to play it expressively is to partially block it and feel the turbulence rushing past your finger. But we'll just
Don't do any vibrato or tremolo because you don't want to spray water or
Cool. Okay. Great. Okay. So okay. Let's get a little reverb on this thing. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So then what we'll do is when I walk near the first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, then you just play one at a time. So that's fine. All right. So okay. So how about we'll just actually space kind of like this. A little equal tempered tuning. Okay. Okay. How about this? Okay. So the D.
Wow.
Awesome. Cool. Good job.
Thank you, Amber.
So maybe we'll do one more at the end.
All right, so
Thank
now
you.
we'll
Thank you. That's great.
continue with the little play,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I
Okay.
continue with the slides,
Background.
okay?
Okay.
So let's see how this works. We'll keep playing in the background, and I'm going to try to do my wrap-up. So, now I have a few questions for you. No, you go ahead.
Turn down the water flow a little bit.
No, it's okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
So first question. Oh, that's too mellow for me. Can you bump up the volume? All right. So, was it awesome? Were you awestruck? Everybody awe-inspired? Shock and awe? I'm in awe. Who's in awe? Yeah. Technically, we are in awe. So now go ahead and augment humans in the world and make the world a great platform and a great place and a better place. I want to thank our keynote speakers. Let's give a big round of applause to our sponsors for making this event possible. Daiquiri, Metaio, Qualcomm, AppDispatch, ARPA Solutions, Intel, SAP, Total Immersion for also creating these amazing glasses for our opening keynote. Remember those? And Twinkles, VividWorks, Kachum, Esri, CandyLab, Innovar Group, and Meta. And a few words about upcoming events. This is over, but there are a few more amazing events this year, all over the world. Starting with AR Summit in London, just in a few days in 20th of June. There's EASTAS in Toronto, or Valence, June 27th, 29th. AR Summit in Shanghai, in China, in September. ISMAR in Australia this year. Inside AR in Munich, Germany. And of course, look for an AR meetup near you. There are plenty out there. Or start a new one if you don't have anyone near you. So to say a few words about ISMAR, I want to bring on stage the co-chair of the event, an AR god, Mark Billinghurst. Keep going. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So I have the perfect images for the mood music. So lean back and relax. I'm sure many of you have wanted to go to Australia, and as Rob down the front there can tell you, this is what it looks like in his backyard. So we'd love to have you over there in a couple of months. You can see things like the beautiful greenery, the amazing outdoor countryside, and of course the fantastic beaches. So for those of you who don't know, ISMAR is the leading research conference in AR. So of course Ori's done a fantastic job with making AWE the leading business conference, but if you want to connect with some of the best AR researchers from industry and academia, this is where you want to come. It's in Adelaide. There's the Adelaide beach right there. And you can join the world's leading AR research conference. There's a lot of opportunities to participate in terms of papers, demos, the art show. We have a curated art gallery, workshops and so forth. And there's also a lot of opportunities to get involved. You can of course attend, but there are still opportunities to present your work. You've got until July the 14th to submit submissions. If you're a company, a small company, you can provide sponsorship, and the sponsorship costs about the same as a registration, and we give you a free registration. So for more details, please visit the website. And the last thing is that Adelaide is the centre of the wine and food region in Australia. So if you want some great wine and food, please come down, and I look forward to seeing you all in a few months. Thanks for the opportunity, Roy.
Thank you. Now you can raise the volume. All right, guys, thanks very much for joining us this year. See you next year at AWE 2014, sometime in June.